Absinthe first came around, Sir Major Henry W., his son Marcellus, and his son-in-law Louise Pernod were given a recipe by the Henroyd sisters. Now, the Henroyd sisters, there is literally no documentation of them aside from what Henry W. and his sons wrote about them. They took the recipe that was given to them, played around with it, and established what became the first modern absinthe distillery in Switzerland. And they started producing absinthe. It was an herbal liqueur kind of similar to chartreuse, chartreuse being a liqueur produced by the Carthusian monks, 130 different herbs. Absinthe follows a similar kind of idea, but the three main ingredients of absinthe are star anise, grande wormwood, and fennel. So it's going to carry those flavors heavily. Now, it's also kind of like gin in of which each one's going to have a different herb balance to it, so everyone's going to be completely and utterly unique. And it got so popular that actually, to avoid import and export taxes, they moved the distilleries from Switzerland to France. And part of why absinthe gained so much popularity was because they had the phylloxera blight that started in the 1840s and went through to the 1890s. There was a big gap from wine and cognac not being available. So absinthe just filled that void, because at that point in time, people had to drink some measure of alcohol with their water, because you couldn't make sure it was pure from bacteria, from parasites, and what have you. That's why alcohol has always been such a strong item in the cultures, up until like shortly after the Revolutionary War. That's when it started to fade out. But absinthe was essentially filling a necessity. Now, going from wines and brandies to absinthe, people took a little bit of time to adjust, but another portion of what kicked it into a lot more popularity was the French government actually was prescribing doses of absinthe daily to their French soldiers in the North African regions, because wormwood actually acts as a natural malaria preventative, much the same way as kasha bark does. The British used kasha bark in a dose of quinine whenever they were in India. That eventually developed into tonic water. But with absinthe, that licorice flavor carries through if you drink it straight. The proper way to drink it is to dilute it. 3 parts water to 1 part absinthe. And what happens is, star anise and fennel, 2 of the main 3 herbs, the oils in those are non-water soluble. So if you know any of your chemistry, it forms a precipitate inside the solution, allows some of those other flavors to come out. Now, absinthe was blamed for all kinds of crazy things. Van Gogh cutting his ear off, all kinds of adulterous acts and all of that. Most of that was incited by the French wine industry trying to get their market share back, because in 1890 they started grafting on American rootstocks to their grapevines, and that saved their production and kept the rest of the vines they had that were clinging to life from dying. So 1890 and on, they started to regain that grape production, and they wanted their market share back. They paid a lot of doctors and a lot of chemists to do reviews and research absinthe and all of that. A lot of your doctors said it was psychoactive, and it's not. The chemical in there is thujon. And what it will do in large enough doses, it induces epileptic style seizures and muscle spasms. Small enough doses, it gives a very similar feeling to THC. No paranoia, no munchies, no delayed muscle reaction. Now, back in 2007, the US government allowed absinthe back into the country, so to speak. The American stuff that is allowed is kind of like a shadow. They regulate the concentration of thujon in it highly. So thujon comes from wormwood. Wormwood is one of the most bitter herbs known to man. So just on the sheer fact if you can't have as much thujon, you can't use as much wormwood, so it's not balanced properly. That's why American absinthes all have that horrendously heavy licorice taste to them. Whereas foreign absinthes are properly balanced. That's what these are. That's what an actual branch of wormwood looks like. Now this part right here is more for show nowadays, but back whenever absinthe was popular, the sugar that they had was closer to rock candy. It was very, very hard, very, very dense, came in like 5-pound loaves. They'd have to hammer off and chisel off little pieces. And they would light it on fire to start caramelizing. So nowadays the fire is just for show. It's a showpiece because we have a little more refined and processed sugar. But as you watch, it goes from that semi-transparent green color. It's going to start clouding after it's about 1 part water to 1 part absinthe. And that's the oils coming out, forming the precipitate. And that allows all of the other herbs to come out and play. This one's going to be a little more vegetal, a little more woody. You're also going to get a mint note on the back end with a teensy hint of like lemon verbena. The licorice is there, but it's not the dominating flavor profile.